Hello everyone, Troy Coe from RDT Defense Training. I'm creating this video and I'm going to do a series of videos after this, specifically speaking to boxing strategies and stances and things like that. Keep in mind, we don't do boxing here at all, even if boxing wasn't as terrible as it is. And specifically creating this video for a John L. 1800 who commented on one of our videos of sparring, freestyle sparring, and I'm going to quote him here. I have more than just some history of boxing, and quite confident my knowledge of boxing far exceeds mine, and that's actually a good thing because I don't care about boxing. But my answer to that is there's past several decades, there's been huge advancements in human performance, kinesiology, biomechanics. We're running faster now, jumping higher and farther than any time in history because of learning how the human body works. And you said you've got some instructionals that are over 100 years old. Okay, so let's talk about the advancements in human performance. It is not just possible, but absolutely factual that there are better ways to punch and to move the body than boxing, simply because the body works better one way than it works to others. So when people tell me I have all this background, or rather they have all this background in boxing, it doesn't really mean much to me because boxing is not a very good fighting style at all. If you are fighting as a boxer and against another boxer, it's who does that best, like a lot of things. I don't purport to be boxing or do boxing. I don't do footwork like boxing. We don't punch like boxing because it is inferior to what can actually be done today. So that's going to be the purpose of this series, this short series on how we punch and why it is different and why it is better. And so there's no need to go and compare how much boxing experience or how much you know about boxing because I don't care. It doesn't matter. The idea behind throwing out a 12-1 MMA record, good for you. I'm sure you operated just perfectly within the rules of the sport. Again, I say this all the time about MMA and boxing or any type of fighting style. Doesn't mean this stuff doesn't work. I mean, Taekwondo or Kenpo and things like that, they teach, snap kicks to the groin. If you do that on the street, guy's going to fall down. You can't really argue with success. But what we're talking about here is overall applying and developing skills in a short period of time even, but over even a longer period of time, which is better. So basically, I'm just going to do a real quick breakdown of the boxing stance and the boxing guard. And of course, stance, as we describe it here, is what you do with your legs. Guard is what you do with your arms or your upper body. The heel-toe camera acquisition, they say basically as they stand, they want to stand with their left side forward. Basically, their left foot, if they're right-handed, will be on the line, center line, in the heel, very sideways. I hear often that, a smaller target. For what? For what? When you turn and stand sideways, your head is still as wide as it is if you're standing squared up. The issue I have here is most boxing or any type of fighting are generally ended with strikes to the head. Yes, sure people, this guy got knocked out getting hit in the liver. That's not a standard thing. Headhunting is the best way to fight in a real situation because this is what controls everything. We call it the biocomputer. It's just like the CPU in a computer. It doesn't matter how good of a video card you have, how much RAM you have, you take out the CPU, the whole computer goes down. Sure, if I take out the video card, it's not going to work either, but I'm guaranteed non-function if you take out the brain or hinder their ability to function that way. So they stand very sideways. There's no drive leg, but if you look at a sprinter, someone who runs for a living and runs in one direction or moves in a direction, you'll see that how they position their legs and their feet in a position that drives them forward. Boxing, they stand very sideways, and they want to push off with their right leg, being to the right side forward, and that's their tradition. And their lead leg is straight, which is okay if you don't have to worry about getting kicked in the leg. But MMA has changed that quite a bit, getting kicked down there, the thigh area or the knee area. If you put a lot of weight on your lead leg when you're punching and keep it straight, it is extremely vulnerable. And it also takes away from a lot of your power if you don't bend that right leg as you're transferring weight into a technique. Again, we will demonstrate this within the process of producing these videos. Now, the boxing guard. Any fighter worth their salt is going to tell you to keep your hands up, but a lot of systems or fighting styles give that a lot of lip service, but they don't actually do it. They punch, their hands drop, or they have their hands down here like this when they're punching. and they want to move and everything else. All these things are viable defenses. The problem is, if you look at how boxers, for example, they punch, they stand so sideways, they have their hand up here really close to their face, but they're so sideways that they lose access to that rear hand functionally. They have to really turn and rotate to access it. Their lead hand generally very high. There's lots of videos you can watch of how some people want your hands, your palms turned in, some want them here, don't ever do this. Different styles, different systems of boxing. But very, very telegraphic action. We're going to demonstrate that in another clip. And there's no biomechanics, meaning punching is terrible, horrible. You're not using your body like it can be used. We don't do boxing here, but go online, you can see videos on the true boxing stance or whatever. But basically, they are promoting standing with the weak side forward. That's a very traditional thing. The idea is to have the strong hand back, which is fine if you can hit with that punch. But coming from the rear side like that makes it a lot more visible or telegraphic. Doesn't matter how powerful it is if it doesn't land, because a person can avoid it. There's three ways that you can be telegraphic. One of them is called weapon withdrawal, okay? And that is loading your hand. And you'll see guys, they'll dip their hands or whatever they're doing, they'll pull their hand back, they'll do something with their hand other than coming forward. The second one is body movement. This is going to be done two ways. They can be completely stationary in the upper body and step forward with their body and then punch, okay? That big body motion is telegraphic in nature. Or they can throw a lot of shoulder into their punch, which is what you see a lot in boxing. Just you know, that little snap that they do, right? That kind of thing. That is a horrible strike here. You're never going to hit anybody in this school with that. And the last one is sight alignment when possible. Now, as I said earlier, basically if you look at Stefan's right hand, which will be on the left side of your screen here, is pretty sidelined with your eyes. Now, boxers will have their hands high, and they're showing bone basically. So imagine somebody throwing a punch like this, okay, just throw that shoulder into that a little bit. You see this all day. Versus throwing your punch more like a piston, which is much more difficult to see coming in. So basically what you're seeing here on the screen is the fist is small, it gets bigger, and then it's gone again. Now, if you see the lead hand, they tell you to keep it up for protection. You see, and you can tell Stefan is standing a lot more squared up than boxers are even reporting to, because, well, you don't have to even turn your feet like that, but just yeah. And because they're talking about smaller target. And again, my question is, what target? Most fights and boxing matches and whatnot end due to head strikes. You stand completely sideways, the head's still the same width. Now I'm going to have Stefan hit the wall over here. This is a pad that we have. It's on a 3/4 inch plywood, and it's off the wall a little bit, so it does give. But he's going to throw that left hand, the jab as the jab as boxers want you to throw this. Go ahead. Now, I'm sure those boxers, people that box, will look at that's a terrible punch. We don't do that, but it's kind of like what you're looking at, I guess. I know the elbow comes out. I know the shoulder snaps forward. And then the rear hand, pretty much universally what I'm seeing is a very upright turn like this. Okay, so go ahead and 1-2 that one there. Okay, now again, I need to add, this is not what we do. I don't expect these to be great punches. Now, we promote strong side forward. This allows, those of you that understand some physics, distance allows for speed. So let's just compare Stefan's rear hand, or his weak hand, his left hand, being a V6 engine in a pickup truck, and his right hand being a V8 engine in the same kind of truck. They both can travel at the same speed, but one requires more distance. So you'll notice that the lead hand can start closer. The lead hand, or your right hand, is going to be more dexterous. You will be more accurate with it. You can generate power more easily with it. The rear hand is back a little bit, gives a little bit more time to accelerate. Now, there's a couple things you have here. If you look and get a little bit closer here, Stefan, There's some sight alignment here. The lead hand is aligned there. Okay. Now I'm going to have Stefan throw a lead jab as we would throw it here on the pad. And now a 1-2. He's going to throw a rear cross, although we have a lead jab and a rear jab. He can do both of these. Jab, lead jab, rear jab, please. One more. Now jab cross. Okay, so what's going on here is there's some mechanics going on. Now, if you want to look at our foot position here, facing us, our hips are at 45 degrees, our feet are at 45 degrees. What I'm hearing, boxers say, oh, don't stand too sideways or too squared up because you're off balance. Well, we're bipedal, we have 2 feet. We can only move and put our feet in position that allows us to support movement or resistance in only a certain amount of directions at one time. 45 degrees is going to be the best thing to do here, okay? Obviously, if he stands too sideways, okay, obviously he's got stability moving towards the camera and away from the camera. If he stands too squared up, you don't have the ability to move forward and back. But if you go 45 degrees, that's the best you can do. And notice that his rear leg, his rear foot here, is facing forward. Okay, like a sprinter would be doing if they are going to be running in one position here. Okay, now boxers, when they stand, even if they have right side forward, they stand very sideways. There's no drive off of that leg. It's very hard to move forward on this. Okay, and it has a tendency to draw you sideways. Okay, now I hear in boxing about ability to defend. I don't think their definition of defense is the same as ours, but they'll parry things and they'll cover and do things, but a lot of their defensive maneuvers are fading away and pawing at things. Now, when you've got 16-ounce, 9-ounce, 10-ounce gloves between you and the bad guy, that creates a lot of protection that you do not have on the street. Also, when you are punching, when you have your hands and your wrist all taped up with gauze and tape, you can hit incorrectly and run a much smaller risk of injuring your hands. You don't have that on the street, so you have to hit correctly. Now, I've heard some people say you need to hit with the first 2 knuckles. We hit with the entire front portion of the fist so that the bones in the hand are in alignment with the forearm with every technique that we throw as much as possible. And the problem, and everybody knows what the boxing fracture is, the pinky knuckle gets broken and sometimes comes through the skin, or it just breaks the bone or depresses the knuckle, and the use of that hand is pretty much gone. So the ability to move when you step forward and face the pad, and just as he steps forward, notice how he never steps to his lead leg as a straight position. Go ahead. Okay, it's a heel to toe motion. This allows you to decelerate and you can move faster forward more easily. I want to mention one thing also about turning the head too sideways. Now this is a little bit cerebral, so please bear with me. If Stefan stands very sideways, okay, now he's looking at me, but you'll notice that if you really look at his eyes, his left eye is a little bit closer than his right eye. Now the human eyes are very, very fine lenses. Now all predators rather, have binocular vision, which means their eyes are facing forward. And we use the 2 eyes to judge contour and range. You want your eyes forward so that you can really see what's going on. You watch cats, you watch the dogs, you watch any predator. When they're getting ready to stalk something, they square up, they bring their eyes straight forward, and that's how they are able to judge range and see timing and contours and things like that. That is a physiological fact. You can poo-poo it all you want. That does happen. Now, John, no disrespect. I'm directing this directly at you. You say here, I don't profess to be a self-defense expert. Then why are we even having this conversation? Because I don't teach boxing, because boxing is not the best thing to do in a real situation, a life-threatening situation. While you do have some knowledge in the field, it isn't what I taught and specialized in. That is what I specialize in, self-defense for the real world. So, but people blur that line thinking that if you're a boxer, you're a good fighter on the street and vice versa. Not that a good fighter or a street fighter could go in the ring and do any better than a boxer does on the street necessarily. And however, I know of someone who's very versed in FMA, which is the Filipino-based martial arts, who has some interesting feedback regarding my RDT versus FMA video. Let's not keep it a secret anymore. Send them my way. I'm not afraid to put what I do up against that stuff at all. Okay? So please, I mean, this is not a challenge, or it is a challenge. I don't really care. Have them contact me. I'd love to hear their feedback. I really would. And so I'm just going to stop this here, and I'll just continue the dismantling of boxing as a fighting system in subsequent videos coming up. Thank you. If you have any intellectual honesty, you're going to see that there's a benefit, not even a benefit, this is superior to what is being taught in boxing.